So what, do we all just punch and shoot?
We are the Thunderbolts!
Yelena, Red Guardian, Taskmaster, Ghost, John Walker, and the Winter Soldier all graced our screens for the oh-so-not-so-officially named team-up movie Thunderbolts, with an asterisk. But was it worth the build-up? Did this unexpected crew deliver the team-up movie we didn't even know we wanted? Let's talk about it.
Can't call ourselves that.
Thank God.
The Thunderbolts. It's a cool name.
When the unconventional band of antiheroes find themselves ensnared in a death trap set by Valentina, they'll find the only way to pull off a mission to rescue a newly introduced addition is to work together and overcome the darkness that is their past. I'll stick to a mostly spoiler-free review. I will cover spoilers in a different video because I actually have a lot of thoughts about it. But for now, I'll keep it as vague as possible. So if you have not seen Thunderbolts yet, first off, go see it because it's really good. And second of all, this will be spoiler-free. Starting off with the positives, this movie has some really good camera work and cinematography. Actually, they shot a lot of this on location. There was a scene where they're walking in a building, and I swear I'm not being over dramatic, it was just nice seeing an MCU scene that was shot in an actual building. I was looking at the background and I was like, oh whoa, that's a real building, like that's an actual thing they're walking through. There was some behind the scenes shots and videos of the places and locations they shot. The opening scene is that scene from the trailer where Yelena, jumps from the building, and it's they actually shot her going off the building. So a lot of these shots they got are very nice, and knowing that they were actually there to, film them and everything, that makes it a lot nicer. Also helps seeing it in IMAX. This is another movie like Sinners that actually does look pretty magnificent in IMAX. Not Sinners magnificent, that's its own level, but this does look fairly good, in IMAX, because, like I said, cinematography, it's very well shot. The team chemistry is another one I wrote down. What I really like is that what this is taking, fairly unknowns. A lot of people, fairly do remember Black Widow, and everybody knows who Winter Soldier is at this point. But it's really bringing together these people who are a little bit aimless in the MCU at this point. And so bringing them together, for such a hodgepodge team, it seems like they were destined to become a team because instantly there's chemistry between each other. Everybody's bouncing jokes off each other. Everybody's working together, more or less supporting each other through thick and, very thin. But it's nice. We like the Marvels. It was just nice seeing a team up where from the get-go there's this really nice team chemistry. The fight choreography is another highlight. This isn't the best fight choreography, which I'll get to that at the very end of this because I actually do need to wrap that around to it. But it's well done because most of these people, aside from Ghost, do not have superpowers, like major ones, like Bucky and John have like the serum. But since they're not ultra heightened people with powers and all that, it comes down to hand-to-hand combat, and it's very well done here. I would say it's about somewhere between the Black Widow movie and pretty much any of the standalone movies that we've seen thus far. It's pretty decent hand-to-hand combat. I ended up liking it. The practical effects is another highlight. I don't know if you can tell, but I really do like this movie. It's got some, weirdly enough, I'll go into this a little bit more, but the effects looked so good when they were practical that it actually made the CGI stand out a few times, at least for me. But I'll dive into that point a little bit later. And the message is probably my favorite aspect of this movie. Everybody, if you've heard any reviews, you've heard that, this movie deals with depression. This movie really tackles that inner darkness that we all deal with. And they're right. This movie does a really good job of portraying the fight. The hardest fight for our darkness is the one that's inside, because there's not a lot that other people can do to help with that. It is something that it's a challenge that we ourselves have to overcome. And so what the overall message about how you can fight that battle was, it was nice. It really was. The characters themselves and how that message is portrayed through them is a whole other thing that I'll get into. But like the message overall about, fighting that inner demon for better or worse, it was really well done. It almost moved me to tears a few times, particularly with the Elena, who's our main hero that we're following this through. There's a couple of scenes where she addresses that pit of loneliness that she's felt, and it's real. You feel it because, of course, that's Florence Pugh. That's just how she acts. She does this thing where she's like, I think they call it being really good at acting, I think is what they call it, and like she's amazing. Everybody is for the most part, but yeah. And then my final thing I had on my list was Bob. The character Bob is a very intriguing and interesting character. Most people are being vague about who he is and what's tied to that and the plot and everything. I'll do that as well. I think you'll probably have an idea of who he is if you look at the trailer, but like even if you're not, I brushed up on some comic history for this character, and they did a very decent MCU-ified way of bringing them to the screen. There are a few minor things that I'll get into that I didn't quite understand, but like for the most part, it was a pretty well done adaptation, is what I'm hearing. The suit, though, I'll get to that in a second. But like overall, this, like, before I get into the things I didn't like so much or were mixed on, this is a very solid movie. It's got a really nice like mixture between synth and rock like background score is what I was picking up. It's very nice. It is a good movie. I recommend seeing it if you can. It is worth it. As far as the things that I was a little less positive on, something this movie struggles with a little bit for me is that it is very exposition heavy, because I'm going to say 70% of the lineup here are coming from either Disney Plus shows or have not been seen for a minute, like Ghost and John Walker and Taskmaster and the like. There's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done as far as talking goes, where they have to like really kind of bum rush you their origin and how they got to where they're at. Like, if you have not seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you got a double dosage of it, because Captain America Brave New World did this a couple months prior, but they introduced John and we get like this really awkward, like fast-paced dialogue of, oh, you're John Walker from ABCD, like this is the thing you did here, and it's like, it's a weird double sword of, if you have not seen the show, it's clunky exposition to kind of get that backstory out, and then if you have seen the show, it's still clunky exposition because it just kind of fits awkwardly. So no matter which way you slice it, because they're unknowns, that's the kind of the other half of the sword you're dealing with there, is that you have to kind of brush up on their backstory, because about half the audience probably forgot who these people are. So it wasn't done terribly. It was just done enough to where I was beginning to notice it. Also, there are some plot threads in this movie and going forward that were left pretty open-ended. Now, because we are in the like penultimate towards an entire Avengers movie, I'm assuming most of these things will be tied up by then, but I'm speaking here right now in 2025 after seeing this movie. There are, at least for me, 7 different questions that I left the screening with, where I was like, you didn't tell us exactly where we began even in the first place, or where we ended after this movie. And so certain characters that I'll leave vague have their whole ordeal and whatever they're going through kind of left just kind of not resolved or explained super well. There's a giant one that I really want to get into in the spoiler. That's why I'm going to have a whole separate thing here, because I have questions. But Yeah, I mean, I like the characters. Don't get me wrong; they're all none of them are like bad additions or anything. It's just that it didn't seem all that focused on wrapping these things up. I know it needs to be left open for another movie, but in doing that, you didn't resolve or answer a few questions that were left in the story that you are telling. And so I feel like that was kind of to the film's detriment. The other thing, like I said earlier, is the CGI a little bit. There is one scene where they're fighting this person, and it looked so bizarrely rubbery and out of place that it actually took me out because I was like, I know what this scene is supposed to be demonstrating, but I can't take it seriously because it looked like it wasn't there. I know a lot of people can overlook that, and most times I can. It's just that this movie had such a clean, raw, kind of like almost indie look that it just, to throw that CGI effect in, it just suddenly, like, I was like, oh, okay. I understand why they needed to do it. It just, like I said, it took me out of the scene, which is an issue because the scene was supposed to be very, like, menacing, and it was. It just was made less because it didn't look all that real, at least to me. Also, for me, the movie starts a little bit slow. We start off with the Elena and her inner monologue about where she is and what she's been up to, and I understand we need that to get her story going. I can't tell if I'm glad or if I'm kind of like upset that we didn't get that kind of like introduction to the other characters, because I would have liked it, I guess, but with the length that her own monologue goes on for, it starts so kind of at a pace that I was like, okay, I see why they had to rush the other, 6 characters that they're going to introduce in here, because I was like, this would have took forever. I understand that for Bucky and like maybe John Walker or Val, like we don't need to explain a ton, but it bizarrely for these characters just kind of showing up without much explanation. It does run a little slow. Now, thankfully, this is literally just, to me at least, the first 15 maybe 20 minutes tops. Soon as they enter this place all at once that you've seen in the trailer, it does get going from there. Literally, it gets going from there. So I'm like, okay. So it was just a minor thing. I was sitting in there in the beginning of the movie and I was like, is this the pace it's gonna have the whole time? Because I can't imagine you can like, but no, it does. And then the other thing, I'll stick to it as vaguely as possible again to avoid spoilers, but most people who are comic fans know who Bob turns out to be. That reveal, for me at least, was not as super fleshed out as I expected it to be, maybe. Because I did research and knew who he was going in, I had an idea of what was going to go down, and so there's just so many questions left open from introducing a character like this, that if you're not going to answer them, I guess that's fine. But then when things get introduced in the second half, or even more for the third act, for like the big, climactic fight, you're just told to accept that this is how it works. Like, comic fans and people who know already have that knowledge, so it's fine enough. But if you didn't know and you're watching a movie, you'd be like, well, where'd this come from? Like, in the movie, it's sort of hinted at what'll happen, but not to this degree. And so when it finally does, it's like, oh, I didn't think, that's not what I like. Unless you knew who he was, you'd be like, is that where this was leading? So it worked out for the best because the third act is pretty great. I will say that this third act is like really well done, and I'll get to that in a second because that's one of my big takeaways. But yeah, it was just a little left, like, again, like I said at the top of the list, the negatives, it is a little left open where there's just not much explained there, and so you're just told to kind of go along with it, which you're able to do. It's just, again, it was something apparent that I noticed in the middle of watching it. So yeah, those are the big negatives and positives that I had for the movie. The overall takeaway, though, at least for me, is Thunderbolts with an asterisk is, it's a breath of fresh air really for the MCU. I personally enjoyed the Marvels. Thunderbolts is far better. It's the more put together movie. I just mean for an MCU movie that I walked into the theater and walked out. It's been a solid 2 years since I've like had that experience. And I know in between the Marvels and this, we've only had 2 other movies. But I mean MCU as a whole. Like Daredevil and Agatha aside, the MCU's been on a bit of a like a a little bit of a trepidatious thing right now. It's a little difficult to enjoy it sometimes, but this was the first time in a while where I was like, I had fun, a lot of fun, and it touched me emotionally. One of the big things in this that I like is the message of like, well, not just the message but the portrayal and how it makes you feel seen, because everybody most likely has had this exact struggle that you're going to see portrayed here, and it's done so relatable and so sad and like harrowing. And it's like, I don't know, I'm getting emotional trying to say it now, but I'm like, it really got to me, because that we're seeing it through the lens of the MCU with the physical manifestation, and like everything's got to be kind of spelled out, but at the heart what they're trying to get across, and that message is so real and is something that everybody needs to hear. And so, as vaguely as I can put it, it's a message that like it's hard to face these things alone, and so it tells you that we know it's hard. It's really hard to face this inner darkness, and so forming a team can be something that might work. It might not always if you get these bozos, but like it could, and so I really like that a lot. But like I said, it was just a really nice change of pace for the current MCU. A lot of people were throwing around like really great best movie since Endgame was one of the TV spot reviews. I'm gonna go again because I absolutely want to go see this again. That's where it's at. I don't go see movies multiple times that often unless I really like it and I really want to see this again. But right now it's in contention with like, Spider-Man No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine and Shang-Chi, which is the wraparound to the fight choreography. Shang-Chi for me still has some of the best MCU fight choreography, and I know that was part of the plot line in the world it's setting up. But that's what I mean when I say people are saying best movie since Endgame. I'm like, well, there's certain aspects that other movies have done better, at least to me. This is still on the higher end of the post Endgame movies, like really high end. But I feel like there's other things that need to be considered before I make that kind of statement. I'll have to really sit on it. But I can see what they're saying. I genuinely do see where you would get that reaction from, because it's that enjoyable. It would turn out that focusing on developing your heroes and making a story that you actually connect to, it actually works out. Who would have thought? It's odd. It's a fairly contained story, except for like the wrap up and everything. But where a lot of the MC movies post Endgame have felt contained, but in a kind of regressive way, where it's like this feels so big scale that the other heroes should be here. This does it well enough to where you're not overly thinking about it. It works out. This is the type of self-contained that I like the MCU, when it just focuses on telling this story. And so for me, like I said, it did a really good job. If you're wondering if you need to stay for the post-credit scenes, yes. I was with my friend and I said to stay for both. I didn't know what the first one was. I knew what the ending at like final one was. I like both of them. The first one's very funny, and then the second one is hugely important. I think the Marvels, Thunderbolts, and maybe Deadpool Wolverine might be the most important like after credits things. And I know Deadpool Wolverine didn't have a major after credits. I mean, the new one with what's his name that they recently revealed was deleted. But like those end stingers are probably very important building blocks. And so I'll just say it was a very Doctor Strange post-credit scene style affair where it's like, this is so exciting because we know that we will get further context for this in a very important movie that's coming up. And so that was just incredibly cool to see, at least for me. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Thunderbolts with an asterisk. And it's a little like, this isn't like the most choreographed review. I'm trying this new thing out where I'm gonna like actually review films as I leave the theater for them. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. I say if you're an MCU fan, you're already probably gonna go see this. But even if you're not, it's worth checking out. The good news is if you're not super knowledgeable of the MCU, it, for better or worse, does a good job of filling you in on the basics that you would need to know. But other than that, you can enjoy this on its own. That's another good thing I haven't seen from the MCU in a while. Like, whoa, something you can just watch on its own. That's nice. So yes, I would definitely be seeing this again. Highly recommend. If I had to give it an out of 10, I would say a nice 8. A solid square 8. Where I'm like, this did a lot of the things that we have kind of missed from the MCU. And so it was just nice, like I said, having that breath back, having that life put back into it, which is ironic for such a downer, kind of depressing affair. But like, you'll understand what I mean by that if you go and see it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I really would like to know what other fans and other people who've seen the movie think of this movie. I know there's a lot of different takes we've left with it. Like I said, I will do a spoiler video at some point, I think, because I have some things I want to like lay down and put my thoughts in audio form on. But overall, Thunderbolts is a very solid movie. Thunderbolts with an asterisk is the MCU movie that we've waited for, but we have not been without since Endgame. It's just that we've waited for a hot minute. And having that pace, that pep in it step back in the MCU before a big Avengers movie, for both reasons in and out of the movie, is a very good sign of the things that are to come. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed this little like review thing here. Like I said, comment below your thoughts on it if you've seen it or plan on seeing it. And thank you for listening. I will try to get some more reviews out this year because this is really fun. But yeah, until the next one, I will be seeing you. Have a good one.
Can't call ourselves that.
Thank God.
Thunderbolts. It's a cool name.